Hello, guys. Welcome to the One Life podcast. We are here with Mr. John Clark, Mr. Clark, and to the kids that he works with. And I'm excited to get into it today because John is someone who has been working with kids for the last several years, or working with students more specifically, and doing a lot of the same things that One Life is doing with our One Life Dare to Dream program. And so I'm really excited to hear from someone who is also has his boots on the ground and is out there making a change happen. You know, you can see right there, be the change you want to be in the world. And he's out there doing it and really living that himself. And so welcome to the podcast, John, and thanks for taking some time today, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So let's get right into kind of your story. And I know, you spent much of the last decade really going in and really working in the trenches with these students and helping them to get on the right path and helping them to figure out what they want to do with their life and develop the skills that they need to prosper. What is it that, I was looking at as I was doing some research, I said, man, this guy has to love it, because one thing that we've learned in the doing this as a nonprofit is that it is not very profitable. It is not something that it's not necessarily that people would go into it for the money. And so I know that there's definitely a passion behind it. So share with us why this has become your life mission and why you devoted much of your life to it, over the last several years, and catch us up to what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is one of my favorite questions, because I have luckily been able to create a successful life for myself as far as my day job. During the day, I'm a software engineer, but every hour outside of that, I'm here trying to help students succeed after graduation. And where a lot of it comes down is, students, we kind of get pushed on the path that you have to graduate, go to college so you can get a good job, work at that job for 40 years, and then retire. And the thing is, they don't really tell you how. You just assume that's going to happen just by going to college, getting a piece of paper that just guarantees you a job, which unfortunately it doesn't. And a lot of the times, it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years after graduation to really make it to where you want to be. And I think that is just way too long, especially when students are graduating with $30,000 to $40,000 in debt, and they have to figure out where to, how they can make money to pay back those student loans. So to me, if you can get a job before you graduate, then it's going to make life a lot easier when it comes to just figuring out your way through. And that's what I'm trying to help students do. And it starts back at high school, trying to figure out your plan and committing to it so you can end up succeeding as you graduate, not 3, 4, or 5 years afterwards.
Yeah, those of you guys who are watching the video, we've been joined by my little guy, Mr. Cashton, and he'll be 7 months in a few days. But I'm curious for you. You've gone and you had a similar experience to what I had, and a similar awakening to what I had. And what's interesting is you still, you still are very much a part of and are in the old system. You have what would most consider a very successful job, and you're going in and working with kids who are on that typical path that you talked about. So what was that awakening like for you? What's that been like, kind of realizing that there is this new path, there is this new shift? And if it wasn't for you, like, is there a story of something like, I could go on and on about the clashes I've had with my parents over the differences in paths that we were on. But what was that like for you in realizing that you couldn't take the same path as your parents, your grandparents, that these kids can't take the same paths as their parents and grandparents? And what was that like for you?
Yeah, so it is interesting because up until about my first or second year in college, I was just marching down the step-by-step path, right? Like, I'm going to graduate. Originally, I was going for engineering. After 2 years, I got my associates and realized that isn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I went towards computer programming. But I actually joined a network marketing company my second year in college, which is very common for college students. And it's like, oh, I can make quick money super fast. And that didn't quite happen. But going to one of my first in-person conferences, it was a training conference, I was like, there's a lot more to life than just following in the footpath of like this step-by-step path. Like, personal development is just this whole new world that I was kind of introduced to. And of course we know about like New Year's resolutions with goal setting, but when you discover this personal development, like there's these people that are super successful. They write down everything that they have into books or videos. I can learn from them. And, one of my biggest people that inspires me is Tony Robbins. And so if I could speak like him, that would be great. But just listening to quotes and realizing that there's not just I have to be the best corporate employee that I can be. It's like I can work on myself, and then the success comes afterwards. And that's when I started realizing like there is more to this than just being, I don't want to say a pawn, but just still following along with the typical college lifestyle.
So I think that's exactly what a lot of people are experiencing and what a lot of people are really, growing up or waking up to. So I'm curious for you, because we've always had this, I don't want to call it a challenge because it makes it sounds like a negative, but we've always had this unique opportunity to create something that is going to relate to these kids, that is going to go into the world that they're in, because, I'm only 27, but that's 10 years removed from high school. And that's a world away from where these kids are. So what has it been like for you going in and speaking to these kids and trying to break through? Like we've tried sometimes, and early on in our attempts, like frankly, we didn't succeed at it, because we were taking the wrong approach, and we've had to drastically alter and change our approach to make sure that we can package it in a way that these kids are able to relate to. So yes, I know you realize it too. So what has it been for you in finding a way to relate to the students?
Yeah, so it has been difficult. Like you said, I'm 28, so I'm 10 years removed also. My 10-year school reunion's coming up here in June. But the big thing is first trying to get down to their level, which they're very distracted with social media. So that's one thing. And I know a lot of times they're just kind of counting down the hours every day. So that's one of the difficulties that I end up with. And admittedly, when I go in, I know that only 20 to 30% might fully relate. But the one thing that I typically get the biggest reaction out of is I had a son at 19 years old. And typically when you hear that, you think of all the statistics of, they've parents of babies, in high school parents typically don't either graduate, or they especially don't go through and graduate college. So the fact that I'm sitting here standing in front of them with a smile on my face and telling them stories about things, they're like, wow, if he made it through like these tough challenges and I'm just struggling because I have a test next Friday that I don't want to study for, there's kind of a gap there. And realizing that, yes, it took a lot of hard work, but the fact that I'm here now, living in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina as a software engineer, shows that hard work up front really pays off in the end. And that's one of the biggest things that I try to get through to students. But I do still have the students that, when I'm sitting there in front of them, they have their heads down on their task or whatever. And unfortunately, I don't try to spend too much energy breaking through to them, because it'll withdraw all of my energy that I'm trying to give to the kids that are sitting there, listening to at least half of what I'm saying. And those are the kids that I know that they could be at a level 5, but my goal is to take them from a level 5 to a level 8 or to a level 10 when it comes to them focusing on their future.
Yeah, it is unfortunate sometimes that it takes a really big challenge, such as, having a kid at early on in life to break through to, some people. And I've seen that personally in my life. So what are, moving on to now these kids who are open to it. What we really love about the One Life Dare to Dream program is seeing the kids who are impacted, because there are kids who are listening and looking and seeking and wanting, and they're having these same awakenings and realizations that we had about this new path. And so what are those things that you like to help instill or help, teach to the kids who are open to this message?
So one of the big things, which I know you guys teach really well, is personal finance. That's a big one. And I can't tell you how many posts I see a week about parents like, why did we not teach personal finance back in schools? Or why do we not teach it now? Which I've heard some rumblings that the government is trying to come in and potentially create that as like a mandatory school class down the road. But for me, first I want to see that they're interested in their future. And I start asking questions like, what do you want to be? And sometimes they have like these they have different dream jobs that they see on TV that seem so, glamorous on TV. One that I heard of recently was like a forensic scientist, and they see CSI with these, $10,000 computers and all this extravagant equipment. And sometimes, unfortunately, it comes down to just being like a computer in a room that they have to do some things. But I want to make sure that, especially if I'm talking to sophomores or juniors, that there's a lot that needs to happen between sophomore, junior year and graduation before college. And with the personal finances is, making sure you have your test scores up, because the higher test scores are, the more financial aid you will receive from colleges in the most part. Trying to get as many scholarships done as possible, because just because you graduate with a piece of paper and $50,000 in debt, it's not guaranteeing you that you are going to get that job afterwards. So I want to make sure that they're going into a job that has a good job market, and that they are putting everything they can to getting that first job, so that they don't have to struggle for the next 5 years after graduation.
Yeah. What's interesting is how aligned, the same kind of thing, same kind of paths are that we go over, and that's vision planning for us and figuring out what they want. And then you talked about personal finances. Where does health and wellness and relationships, how does that kind of play into what you talk about with the students?
Yeah, relationships for me are a big one. Obviously, I like to be healthy, but I'm not the fitness trainer, so I can't sit there and tell them, what to eat and not eat. But when it comes to relationships, that is something that I've learned a lot about in the past few years, because I try to tell them, people right now, we're all communicating through text messages and on social media. But the thing is, there's so many times that I have made connections at different events, or big events like you guys hold, or even just a networking event. And when you start meeting people, they can introduce you to the people that can take you to the next step. Now, with students, they're not quite looking to try to make business connections yet, because they're still in school. But you could end up meeting the person that is the brother of the hiring manager at this company that you're applying to. And when you are applying to different jobs, they spend 10 to 15 seconds looking at your resume. You have to tell them your entire life story in 10 to 15 seconds in text on a piece of paper. But what if you bump into somebody and you can explain your life story in 20 to 30 minutes in a nice personal conversation like we're having here? All of a sudden, he's going to go to that person that he knows, or introduce you to the person that he knows, and say, this person's amazing, you need to talk to them. I think they'd be a perfect fit for your company, for your business, or whatever it may be. And I love those, because it's not about trying to sell yourself. It's just a casual conversation, and they get to know the real you, rather than the bullet points that you have to put down onto a resume.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's such an important thing, and I think that for whatever reason, not stressed, right? I think when I was in school, and I don't know, maybe things have changed, but probably not too much. It was all about the cool kids, or joining different groups, not really thinking about who were the people that you were actually associating with, and even going into college, how valuable that was. So moving forward, what sort of things like how does this actually take shape? Like, when you think about what are the actual solutions? Because I think that too many people, they point at the problem, but then they don't actually go out there and do anything about it. And so for you, what have you been finding are solutions? What is it, what does that look like for you? And I know you're going in and speaking to schools, or you mentioned networking events. Like what sort of things do parents, teachers, students need to be creating, facilitating, so that students can have these kind of skills and eventually the success?
Yeah, one thing that I talk about big in my presentations when I'm talking at schools is just focus, which sounds so simple, but it's giving that focus and attention. And I'm not saying that you got to spend 2 hours every night doing college homework, or doing all this research. But the fact that at least every day have something going on in your mind that you're thinking about the future. I can't tell you, like, every single day when I wake up, my mind typically starts racing about what my day is going to be like. What can I learn? What can I pull in that's going to make me, 0.5% better than what I was the day before? Now, for students, though, a lot of times they have no idea what they need to do to get to point B, C, or D. You're like, I want to go to college, but what does that look like? What's the application process? What scholarships are available? So it's going to take research, but it takes time to do that research. And sometimes it's easy to find, other times it's not. But the fact that you're spending focus, either daily, weekly, at least monthly, focusing on that future, writing down a list of things that you want to figure out, and then kind of attacking those goals one step at a time, is a big thing. And a lot of times when you talk to students, I go in and I ask how many students have the FAFSA filled out, and some of them don't even know what that's about. Or I work with another organization called Student Success Agency, and I'm a one-on-one mentor with about 10 students. And I was talking to them about there's some very low or 0% interest loans out there if you get in the FAFSA filled out early enough. And they're asking what interest was. And I know, like, unfortunately, we don't cover that in class. And interest to me is the worst thing in the world when it's working against you. And I want students to realize that. And but you know, when you go to the college fairs or you go do a college visit, the longest line at the college visit is the Wells Fargo or the credit card line, right? Because these kids are 18 now and they're signing up for their first credit card, but they don't understand the negative side effects of that. So between focusing and putting attention on the future, realizing the good and the bad, I think that's going to make a huge difference versus letting life happen to you and just showing up hoping that it'll all work out okay.
This has been fantastic. A ton of great insight, and you have a wealth of experience now. So if you could go back to, 19-year-old, maybe even 18-year-old John, 9 months before the baby, what do you tell yourself? What do you like if you're going back to that era? What sort of advice do you give to that John?
Yeah. So one thing I've realized is I've always had a fear of failing. And I think that's held me back. Like, I'm doing pretty well now, but I think I would have been further if that did not hold me back. So I've always had the sight on the future, which is why I definitely make sure that I tell that to different students. Like that's what got me to where I am today, is by focusing on the future. But the biggest thing is with not being afraid to fail. And when I know that I can do something and I'm good at it, I go all in on it. Without asking questions, I just go all in on it. But as soon as I'm worried that somebody might not like this idea or that it might not go over so well, that's when I kind of pull back the reins a little bit and like, do I really want to do this? I try to get a lot of validation from people like, what do you think about this idea? This is what I'm thinking about doing. Or if I'm going to do something, I'm like, I'm kind of trying this thing. I hope that it works out, versus just saying, this is what I'm going to do in it. This is what I'm going to do, pass or fail, that I'm giving it my all. So if I would have done that sooner, I think that definitely would have pushed me even further than where I am today. So, I mean, we're all going to fail. We're going to learn from it. But learning that earlier on could have helped me out a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah, there's a a big, obviously, aversion to failure in the education system, and it doesn't necessarily translate to life in the same way. So the system is ripe for a change, and it's great that there are people like you who are willing to go out there and make things happen. John, I know you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. You obviously have your website. Where should people go to catch up with you more, or if they want to kind of get involved with you and in your community, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, so Facebook and Instagram, it is at John Clark Speaks, and that's John without an H. It's actually short for Jonathan, but I only get called that when I'm in trouble by my mom. So yeah, at John Clark Speaks for Facebook and Instagram. And then I also have a free guide on how you can graduate with zero debt. And that's on my website, successaftergraduation.com/free.
We'll link all that up in the notes so that you guys can get that. And this has been a great introduction to the community, and I'm excited for the community to get just acquainted with you. You seem like someone who's very much belong in what we're doing, and we definitely want to contribute to what you're doing. So once again, John, thanks so much for hanging out. And I have it pulled up here, and it's on Facebook, John Clark Success After Graduation. So that's also a website. And then John Clark Speaks on Instagram. So go hang out with him. And guys, we will see you. If you guys are catching this on the live one, go get the One Life shirts. I don't know if you guys know if these are available. onelifefullylived.org/shop. And we'll have some more recordings for you guys coming up. And they always come out. So people always ask when they're happening. They happen all the time. So just keep an eye out in your inbox, and we'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.